Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Bethany, but most of you know me as Dr. B. I'm one of the naturopathic doctors at Anasa Personalized Medicine, along with Dr. Kaz and Dr. Cardarelli. I'm so excited to be here pre-recording this video for you to watch and talk more about healthy eating during the holidays. So if you happen to attend my last presentation, then you know that I used to be a chef. And so I try my best to incorporate the knowledge that I have gotten throughout the years cooking professionally into my practice of medicine because, as we know, food is basically the building blocks to our entire health. We need food to fuel us, and it's super important. And as naturopathic doctors, and if you've come to see any of us doctors at Anasa, you'll know that we take nutrition pretty seriously. So here I figured that I would create a presentation. We were initially going to do it in person, but I know that the holidays are a very stressful time, especially now when Thanksgiving is coming up. I figured that it would be a little bit easier to just pre-record this video for you so that you can always watch it on your own time. So thank you for joining me. We're going to be talking about healthy eating during the holidays. And so I know that this time of year is very hectic for most people now that November, December, January, the new year. And so I've had a lot of patients come to me recently and say, Dr. B, I know I've been working on my nutrition or been following this specific diet or even eliminating my foods that came up on my food sensitivity test. But Thanksgiving's coming up and the holidays are coming up and potlucks are coming up. What am I supposed to do? And I completely get it. It's nerve-wracking, especially knowing that maybe you're sticking to a certain diet that one of us doctors had given you, or you're eliminating the foods that came up on your food sensitivity test, and you're feeling so much better, and you don't want to ruin that progress. Well, I'm here to tell you that it's okay. It is okay. The more you stress about the foods that you eat during the holidays and how they're going to affect you, the more stressed and anxious you're gonna be. And I'd rather you just be like, okay, we understand the holidays are coming up. Let's make a game plan. And it's okay. We're humans. And I always say, if that means you're gonna have your grandmother's apple pie or your aunt's pumpkin pie or your mom's mashed potatoes, then do it. Do it. Because that kind of stuff feeds the soul. And it's only gonna come around once a year. So you might as well. But there are ways to kind of make sure you're going to go about things in a healthier way. And so I'm here to share some of that information with you. So I just want to say before we talk about anything that this video is for educational purposes only. None of this is medical advice. I'm here to just teach you and give you information. So let's get started. So, what is it about the holidays that makes us tend towards not sticking to our nutrition goals? Temptation, of course. Food in itself is so cultural, so emotional. And like I said, grandma's famous pies or your aunt that makes the best cookies. I know my aunt made the best mashed potatoes, and you know why? Well, I thought the whole time she was making it with heavy cream, but she was actually making it with low-fat milk, but a ton of butter, a ton of butter. And honestly, I didn't even care how bad it was for me because it was so good. And pumpkin pie is my favorite. And so, knowing myself that I can't have dairy and gluten, I found that there are so many options out there. You just have to look for them. And now that most people are learning about their food sensitivities, there's so many options out there to choose a little bit more healthier options. So, of course, I'll say it again, don't be so hard on yourself for being tempted by these foods because that's what the holidays are about. Food is so integral in our society and different cultures. But I will say there's a way to kind of go into things a little bit healthier. So let me start out with what do the holidays have in common? Carbohydrates, carbs, lots of carbs everywhere. Not the best, but why though? Because carbohydrates are basically sugars. They're complex sugars. So a bunch of different sugar molecules linked up together make a carbohydrate. They're found in mostly all foods besides protein sources because red meat has protein. But carbohydrates are not bad by any means. But it's important to know the difference between different carbs. So you've probably heard somebody tell you this, or one of us doctors at Anasa mention something called simple carbohydrates versus complex carbohydrates. So what does that mean? It's exactly what it sounds like, simple and complex. So simple carbohydrates are sugars that maybe just have one or two, maybe three molecules of sugar together, and they're found in forms of things like white rice, white bread, things that are very processed. And so those carbohydrates, because they're already processed, they're simple, meaning that they're mostly just sugar. So what happens is your body's able to break them down very quickly. Whereas complex carbohydrates are multiple different types of sugar molecules that are branched, that have different fibers in them, but they also tend to have some protein as well. And they can also have other things like starches or a type of sugar, um, things like that. So what happens is they're not as refined, and they usually come with other things because they're in a healthier food source. So what happens is your body takes a little bit more time to digest those because they're complex. So think of it, simple, easy to digest. Complex, not so easy. And so what happens with the simple carbohydrates is your body, once you eat that food, it's digested very quickly because carbohydrates and sugars are your main way that your body likes to have its energy source because it's really a fast way to get energy. And so simple carbohydrates are easily absorbed into the body, which means it spikes your blood sugar. So what happens is because it's so easily digestible, it's broken down into glucose, which is the sugar that our cells use for energy. And so then your blood sugar increases and it spikes up really fast. But because it's a simple carbohydrate with no other nutrients, what happens is you get that spike, but then you immediately get a drop after. So you don't get sustained energy. And most of you have probably felt this way. It's when you have that sugar high and then you crash. It's because it's not a sustained type of energy. So, like I said, things like refined white flour, white rice, sugars like cane sugar, even maple syrup, all of those sugars as well. So that's something to watch out for, and the holidays are full of all of those things. So usually what I say is best way to kind of mitigate that is by choosing complex carbohydrates. So instead of just a white bread, something more whole grain. So when I say whole grain, you've probably seen it in the store. There's a lot of white versus wheat bread and things like that. Whole grain means the grain's whole, exactly how it sounds. But what comes with that is fiber too. So the fiber causes your body to kind of take a little bit more time to break things up. And it's not so simple anymore, it's complex. And so, and I know I keep saying simple and complex, and then they're gonna get stuck in your head, but that's a good thing because that now you're gonna know. So the complex carbohydrates take a little bit more time for your body to digest because it has to digest all of the other molecules that are included with those sugars. And so because of that, you don't get the huge spike in blood sugar. Instead, it increases, but then it'll plateau a little bit before it crashes down. And so that's a more sustained amount of energy. So that's one of the main tips is choose your complex carbs. So if you're having bread at the dinner table, maybe choose something that's a little bit whole wheat, things with grains and seeds. And then if you're having potatoes, for instance, I know mashed potatoes are delicious, but white potatoes are full of simple carbohydrates. So something that you could swap out is something like sweet potatoes. Those are a complex carbohydrate. And in general, when you're getting dessert, I know dessert is hard and there's not that many great sweetener alternatives. Choosing things like coconut sugar instead can be super helpful rather than just cane sugar. It has a little bit more nutrients in it. It doesn't really cause that spike in blood sugar like regular sugar does. And it has almost like a molasses flavor because it's a darker sugar. So you could use it in place of things like brown sugar. Now, you're probably going to have a lot of simple carbs on during the holidays, but what's important is that you're going to make sure to use smaller portions and have a complete plate. So you're going to have your protein, you're going to have your vegetables, and then you're going to have your carbohydrates. That way, I know everyone tends to just love the sides, the mac and cheese, the mashed potatoes. I totally get it. The stuffing too. Everything's so good. I can't wait. But you want to make sure that you're having a well-rounded meal so that you're able to digest these things first. So what I usually say is to even try getting a smaller plate. We have those huge dinner plates for holidays. Even doing a smaller plate or just getting little portions of everything. And remember, you can go back up for more, especially if it's buffet style. You can go back for seconds. We tend to just eat with our eyes, and so we get so much food, and then you don't want to feel bad, especially if you're going over somebody's home and you want to make sure you're eating all your food. So take little portions in the beginning and go from there, because I guarantee your eyes are bigger than your stomach. And what's helpful too is if you start eating your veggies first, then your protein, and then save the carbs for last, even though they taste so good. What's going to happen is your body's going to have the energy working on those proteins and the complex carbohydrates from the veggies that those other simple carbs that you might be getting through the stuffing, the mashed potatoes, it's going to kind of take longer to digest. So it's kind of tricking your body. The next thing I always like to talk about is cranberry sauce. So if you saw the newsletter, which kind of had the introduction for this presentation, you would have seen that I recommended a recipe for making your own cranberry sauce. So cranberry sauce, a lot of people like it, some don't. It's one of my favorites. I even like the canned stuff, I know. As a chef, it sounds terrible, but it's nostalgic, but it's full of so much sugar. And cranberry sauce is so easy to make. And I actually have a bag of fresh cranberries here. I don't know if you've ever used them before, but they're like they're pretty big actually. They're super sour. So if you do get a bag of these, I dare you to just eat one and see what happens. They are sour. They're one of my favorites to just eat on their own. So if you like sour stuff, go for it. If not, I would say best thing to do with this too is when you cook your own cranberry sauce, you can adjust the sweetening. So instead of doing cane sugar, you could do something like that coconut sugar that I mentioned, or you could just do orange juice and have like an orange and grate some orange zest in there. Add the cranberries, a little bit of water, a little bit of added sweetener, but most of the sweetening is going to come from the orange juice, and it's really good. So hopefully, simple versus complex carbs make some sense. I know another big thing that can cause some issues is I know I do it myself, is I don't eat breakfast before the holiday meal because you want to save room. Not the best idea. It's hard for us to not be in our set schedule when we do have holiday meals, but it's best to try to do that. And so skipping a meal, what's going to happen is you're going to be basically fasting. And so your body's in the starvation mode and it's hungry. So then when you go to eat stuff, you're going to get that spike in blood sugar, but then you're going to crash. So make sure that you have something to eat before you go to the holiday party, especially if you have more food sensitivities or a stricter diet, eating stuff at home before, and then maybe just having a few things when you go over someone's house. And then if you are visiting family or friends for the holidays, it's you can just ask the person that is hosting what kind of food they'll be offering beforehand. And if you're worried about asking, not to sound a little bit nosy or anything, you can always just say, I was just wondering because I'd like to bring something and maybe bring a dish that, follows more of your nutrition goals and share it with your family and friends. And then make sure to ask the hosts if there's going to be any food allergens, sensitivities, because if there are, you can always bring food with you. And then, like I said, eating a light snack before, you'll be less likely to overindulge. And then I don't know about you, but especially on Thanksgiving, when my family would eat a big meal, all we want to do is lay on the couch. Not the best idea, especially after eating such a big meal. So, what's helpful is staying active after. So, maybe gather the family and friends and go for a walk. And that will do will increase your metabolism for sure, but it'll help you feel less of that feeling after you eat that big meal. So get the whole family and friends involved. Everyone go for a walk outside, get some fresh air. Can be like a new tradition. Now, we mentioned some of the foods that tend to be on the holiday table, so I want to talk a little bit more about that and some healthier food swaps. So, a lot of people like to have casseroles during their holiday meals. So it's best to avoid casseroles as much as possible because most of them have a cream-based sauce. And so try instead, say like a green bean casserole, you could do something like green beans sauteed in a garlic sauce with avocado oil and some lemon juice and lemon zest. Because anytime you use the zest of a citrus fruit, it adds just great flavor. And fresh herbs, things like sage, rosemary, thyme. Play around with these things. Cooking is really fun. And it's a great way to control what's in your food. Even trying sauces like pestos or chimichurris, which is a um, herb sauce as well. Something different than the heavy cream and heavy sauces is able to give more flavor without all of that dairy. And then maybe instead of white potatoes for your mashed potato, maybe trying mashed sweet potatoes or mashed cauliflower. And then if you're using sour cream, you can always swap out things like Greek yogurt. So there's so many different options. And if you have any questions about anything, I'd love to hear your feedback. So you can email us at anasamedicine@gmail.com. And if you have any questions about this presentation or looking for any more recipe sources or have any suggestions for the next presentation, please do so. And you've heard me talk about the food sensitivity test, which if you are a patient of Anasa, we've probably talked about it before. You've had it. So if you're interested in something like that too, you can always call the office or reach out to whichever one of us, Dr. Kaz, Dr. Cardarelli, or myself, and we can tell you more about the food sensitivity test and how it can show basically what foods are best for you, what foods cause more inflammation. So there's so many different options out there, but I just want you to know everything's going to be okay. It's okay if you cheat a little, just be prepared and come with these tips and maybe create a new tradition, walking after your meals. So I really appreciate you spending time with me. And I'd love to hear your feedback about this video. So please email, reach out to us, and I hope you all have a great, happy, and healthy holiday season. Take care.